Okay, good afternoon, friends. So we were talking about central place theory. So we have talked about how the three principles were used by Christoller to explain that how the hierarchy of central places work. उसमें किसी को कोई प्रॉब्लम? साउंड इको कर रहा है क्या? सही करो. उसमें किसी को कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है? कमाल है यार, मुझे भी आज तक प्रॉब्लम है. ओके, क्रिटिकल एनालिसिस करते हैं. See, the main problem with central place theory is whatever central place theory is talking about, some kind of relationship would be found. Hierarchical relationship between the places or the central places. मेरा नंबर है सबके पास? है? ठीक है. ये वाला नंबर में फ्रीक्वेंट रहता हूँ, दूसरे वाले नंबर पे नहीं रहता. ओके, so the basic problem with the central place theory of Christoller is some of the rigid aspects that are associated with it. Many of these emerge from the simplifying assumptions and the perspectives that he is taking into account. Perspective that he takes into account. So these are the main aspects of weaknesses of the central place theory. Now, when we have to critically analyze, okay, we'll be talking about criticism. But you tell me, when you have to critically analyze, do we also have to talk about some of the positives? It is also part and parcel of the critical analysis. Alok, क्या हुआ? उसको मिक्सिंग करो, कैसे गड़बड़ हुआ? चेंज किया था क्या? Okay, so for example, you see, first point itself says central place theory is based upon certain simplifying assumptions which don't occur in reality. Thus, the result of the central place theory also rarely found to be occurring in reality. Some of the assumptions, for example, include isotrophic surface. Can I say it is an ideal concept and it is actually rarely found. Isotrophic surfaces do not exist. We know this very well. Even a surface which appears flat is essentially not isotrophic, because it would be affected by other factors like relative location, like presence of transportation arteries. All of these would make the surface to be what? Not isotrophic. So concept of isotrophic surface is very, very ideal. Okay? That is first thing. Then the behavior of consumer and seller is not always rational. We have talked so much about this, that the concept of economic human rational is again what? It is too much ideal. It is too much hypothetical. Such human beings do not exist. At best, humans can be boundedly rational. Like for example, did we saw that in India, in case of the rural settlements, the rural houses, what was the most important floor type we were finding? Can I say the floor type or the shape of the floor used to be rectangular was the most common one. Hexagon to nahi tha. Rectangular is what? It is also one of the way in which optimal utilization of the space can be done. Take a better utilization of the space than circular floor plan. So again, we find that in reality people are hardly economically rational human beings. Okay? Thus, many of the assumptions which it is talking about, it would not be found in reality. For example, such assumptions lead to conclusion which hardly found in reality. For example, the hexagonal pattern of again central area, again in many this problem you have to correct. It is complementary area everywhere, are rarely found in reality, as no surface is isotropic. Moreover, the boundaries of complementary areas are also not well defined, because the behavior of seller and consumer is rarely found to be fully rational. हमने देखा था, if you remember, we talked about that if there was, this was the zone of competition between two central places. So we draw a line O from the middle, and we assume that all the people living between A and O and all the people living between O and B, they would be going to their respective nearest places. So people living here, they would be going to A, while people living here would be going to B. But can I say that it is not always necessary? It would keep on changing, because human beings are also guided by several behavioral factors. So it keeps on changing. So it is not to be expected to be true. ठीक है? Like for example, you take the case of here at A, some incentive is offered or some discount is offered in the service. Can I say people would change their mind? It can happen that people located here might move to A. Okay? So definitely we'll be finding that some of the assumptions made are very, very far away from reality. Another assumption, for example, made in the Christoller theory is that the demand is constant. Can I say demand varies from time to time? As people income levels change, the demand also varies. So again, it is not necessarily true. Another important problem in the central place theory we found, you can see, the model does not, okay, we'll come to that, but one more problem is the perspective. Can I say the central place theory is based upon the Christoller's central place theory is based upon the perspective of least cost approach. Least cost approach. You tell me, can I say least cost approach is just one way of maximizing the profit? Today we are in the era of which era we are in? Post-Fordism. And in the era of post-Fordism, we find what? That industries are located or the functionalities are located more according to demand. Market pull is an important factor which determines the location of functionalities. Location of the functionalities. So again, we can very clearly say that central place theory is what? It is highly rigid. The problem with this Christoller central place theory is it is highly rigid. अभी देखेंगे लॉस्क सेंट्रल प्लेस थ्योरी इज नॉट सो मच रिजिड. he takes into account that profit can be maximized by both. One way of maximizing the profit is the least cost approach, while other way of maximizing the profit is maximizing the revenue. Okay? Maximum revenue approach. So again, in this context, Christoller's theory is what? It is highly rigid. Also one problem with Christoller's theory, ये भी नहीं लिखा हुआ point, इसको भी लिखना है, that Christoller comes up with a separate central place hierarchy. Central place hierarchy for each service. For each service. देखा था हमने, 3 services he has taken. So he is coming up with separate central place hierarchy for each service. That means his assumption about cities is what? That cities are, or perspective it is based upon, that cities are monofunctional. Monofunctional. Can I say this is not true? Because majority of cities are multifunctional. Majority of the cities are multifunctional. So it is far from reality. In the world, in real world, what we find? Monofunctionality is more of an exception. Multifunctionality is a rule. Okay? So again, it is what? Too simplistic and far away from reality. This makes the theory too simplistic and far away from reality. Who will tell me why he was coming up with separate hierarchy for each service? Okay, thank you. एक आदमी तो है जो बता रहा. Because we saw that the efficiency criteria for each service was different. The way of saving money, achieving the least cost, was different in different type of services. We saw that in marketing the way was different. In marketing, the idea was based upon that minimum number of lower order central places should be present within the complementary area. On the other hand, in case of transportation, the efficiency criteria demanded that majority of lower order central places should be based upon or should be located on main transportation arteries, and the length or the route length of the transportation arteries should also be minimized. In case of administration, what we found? It was based upon the criteria that the administrative efficiency is highest when the boundaries are clearly defined. That is why he was coming up with separate hierarchy for each of the functions. But very clearly this kind of aspect makes his model bit away from reality, because in reality we find that the functionalities overlap. Majority of the cities are what? They are multifunctional rather than monofunctional. Okay? So this is the one aspect which is related with the central place theory. Criticism of the central place theory. Now, one more criticism of the central place theory is, central place theory does not consider the location of industries. This location of industries would do what? It would invariably modify the centrality of settlements and threshold of goods. Because it is just talking about what? Services. Does it talks about manufacturing? It is not talking about manufacturing. Wherever industries would be located, what they would do? They would change the pull that a center would have. Okay? Industries, if you look into after agriculture, which is the most important sector which is able to provide employment? It is manufacturing. Has the maximum capacity to provide employment rather than the services. Thus, very clearly, wherever such manufacturing industries would be located, they would invariably modify how the central places would be found. Thus, he is unable to take manufacturing into account. Then the model is more suitable for agrarian landscape because modern factors such as impact of improved transportation, communication, internet, shopping malls, etc. have reduced distance between consumer and the seller. All these factors have not been taken into account. These are what? These are more modern industrial concepts which have emerged. Okay, for example, you can understand transportation. When Christoller was making his theory in 1933, at that time, okay, there was automobile, but can I say still the dominance of or use of automobile was limited? Private automobiles particularly. Can I say after this period particularly the use of private automobile has multiplied. It has become very, very dominant factor. So with the emergence of these private automobiles, can I say the distance has reduced? And if it is so, will the transportation routes play very, very important role? Very clearly they will be playing important role. ठीक है, we will see internet. अभी उसको explain करता हूँ. We'll talk about the world cities and we'll talk about how internet is changing many of the aspects which are there. ठीक है, but this is the main shortcomings of the central place theory. Now what we'll do, first we'll do one question, then we'll move on. Two questions in fact we'll be doing. So first question is, examine the applicability of central place theory in contemporary times. In contemporary times. And I'll give you 2 minutes. Think how you'll be writing. Okay. Very importantly, one important change in the question should be central place theory of Christoller first we are talking about. So this mistake of my should also help you learn one thing, that in the examination there can be a question which can simply say central place theory. And this would mean that I would have to talk about application of both Christoller and Loschk if it is not specified. ठीक है ना? Okay. So applicability of central place theory of Christoller in contemporary time. Suppose if I had to write this answer, I will be talking about, always as we have seen, whenever you have to talk about the application of a theory, you will talk about application of the theory from two perspectives. Whether the theory applies fully, that we will test. And second, if it is not applying fully, because majority of the theories would not apply fully, because they are based upon certain simplifying assumptions. Still we will be finding that the theory would have several important concepts. And those concepts would be applicable and useful. For example, you tell me, if we talk about, is the concept of threshold population very, very useful? It is applicable. Concept of centrality, it is applicable. So all the derivative concepts that Christoller talks about, they are still very, very applicable. Although the way he formulates the theory, the propositions of the theory, the hierarchy he talks about, there would be several questions. Okay? So when we are talking about the applicability of central place theory, it is tested in terms of, or in two parameters. Through two parameters we are testing the applicability of central place theory. One is the values of K. Value of K. Do they match? That is one thing we check. And second, what we are doing, we are checking it from the perspective of theoretical distance. Theoretical distance. So what is theoretical distance? It is the population of a CP, central place, upon, or to the ratio of population of a CP immediately below in hierarchy. So this, if you talk about, is basically the concept of theoretical distance. So it talks about the ratio of how much this population is, how many times of this population. This ratio is what we call it as the theoretical distance. Okay? Now, because Christoller calculated all of these, हमने इसके डिटेल्स नहीं पढ़े हैं थ्योरी के, हमने जस्ट उसको सुपरफिशियली देखा है. Christoller calculated for each of the settlements, he calculated the hierarchical systems, he calculated for all of them the theoretical distances as well. Okay? In fact, he found that in southern Germany, there was 6 level of hierarchy which was present. So if we look into the application of the central place theory, इसको एक दो लाइनें लिखवाता हूं, कैसे लिखेंगे? You write first. Central place theory of Christoller is based upon certain simplifying assumptions and some perspectives like the least cost approach. Full stop. In the real world, such assumptions do not exist. Exist like the isotrophic surface, the economic rational human, etc. Full stop. Thus, it is to be expected that when the model is applied in totality, it falls short. It falls short. Full stop. This can be exemplified by taking a case study of its application in India. Full stop. When applied in India, comma, it is found that the model is applicable only partially. With respect to both the values of K and theoretical distance. Values of K and theoretical distance. Change the paragraph. When the marketing principle is applied, comma, taking into account the census classification of settlements in India, comma, it is found that the theory is largely inapplicable in terms of values of K, ब्रैकेट में लिख लो, which should ideally be 3, value of K which should ideally be 3, ब्रैकेट में लिखना है इसको, full stop. In India, this value differs by quite a margin. For example, class 2 cities of India serve more than 60 class 3 cities. Thereby making the value of K very high. Okay, so when we look into the hierarchy of the settlements which are there, India mein you must be aware, we have already talked about that census classifies the places into 10 type of settlement. Class 1, class 2, class 3, till class 6 is the urban places, and then class 7, 8, 9, 10 are rural places. Okay? 10 is the rural places whose population is less than 500. Okay? So there are 10 such settlements which are identified. If we take this as the basis, then we are finding that in below class 2, each class 2 city is serving about 60 class 3 cities. Okay? So again it is what? It is the numbers are too big of K. Thus we find this problem is found at each level of hierarchy. Thus at none of the hierarchy we find that the values become K, or values of K become 3. So in terms of first parameter, what we are finding? It is not applicable when we take into account the marketing principle. However, when we take into account the criteria of theoretical distance, central place theory is found to be largely applicable. ठीक है, so लिख लो इसको. However, when the criteria of theoretical distance is taken into account, comma, the CPT of Christoller is found to be largely applicable with two exceptions. With two exceptions. Full stop. Ideally, according to the theory, the theoretical distance in marketing should be should be 1:1.72. It should be 1:1.72. That means the upper hierarchy central place is how many times? 1.72 times of the central place which is below that. Okay? So here what is found? Here it is found that this is the ratio which is found. क्या लिखा है हमने? एक मिनट मेरे को दिखाना वो सेंटेंस. should be 1:1.72, and in India this value varies from 1:1.41 to 1:1.83. comma, which is near to the ideal values. ठीक है? So देखो, there are two exceptions where this does not holds. And which are the exceptions? The exceptions are like this. So here lies the class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4 and class 5 and 6 towns. And below are the rural settlements. So here you can see, here it is lying between 1.41 to 1.83. Here also it is same. So here the distance between these places is ranging between 1.1 is to 1.41 to 1 is to 1.83. But at two places it is broken where the distance between class 1 and class 2 towns is very big. And there is a very big rural-urban divide in India. Okay? So it is broken where? It is broken at two places. So लिख लो इसको. Actually इसमें एक थोड़ा सा चेंज ये कर लो. I have written here class 1. It should ideally I should be writing here million plus cities. You write million plus cities, and here class 2 and other class 1 and other class 1 cities. So the distance we find that it is very high between the million plus cities which are growing at very, very fast rate. This material was given to you. ये दिखाया भी था मैंने पहले भी. Do you remember what we talked about? How the class 1 cities are growing compared to the other cities. And this growth of the class 1 cities is concentrated where? In the metropolitan cities. Not all class 1 cities. It is to be found. ठीक है? So much so that कि हमने ये भी देखा है that 10 million plus cities, those are which are having population more than 10 million. Only 3, but total population, urban population living in them is how much? Around 13%. There are 5 million plus cities whose population is 5 to 10 million. But how much total population is living in them? Around 10% of the total population. You can see here, there are 33 million plus cities whose population is between 1 to 2 million. How much people are living there? Only 12 million, which is less than the 3 major metropolitan cities of India. So how much is actually the distance when you compare it with the total class 1 cities? How many are total class 1 cities? 468 class 1 cities are there. But you compare them with 52 million plus cities, they have total 42.3% of the urban population. In class 1 cities, there is 70.2% of the urban population. That means in 52 cities, what is living? More than 40% of the total urban population is living. Rest, if you look into more than 400 cities, there is how much people living? Only 30% of the people are living. So the distance here between the million plus cities and the other class 1, other lower order cities is what? It is very, very high. Same is the case when it comes to the divide which is there between rural and urban. इसका देखना है तो you can understand. You can see this diagram. Can you see here the class 1 cities? Class 1 cities, this blue wala hai, this is growing. This is the number of towns in each of the size classes. They have been growing. Can you see class 2 towns are also growing? Can you see class 3, this green, also growing? Class 4 also growing. But there is 2 categories which are not growing, 5 and 6. Can you see that? So why this is? Because class 2 are graduating into class 1. Class 3 are graduating into class 2. Class 4 are graduating into class 3. 5 and 6 are graduating into class 4. So all these are growing, but graduation of rural areas to cities, transformation of rural areas to cities, it is what? It is a very slow process in India. ठीक है ना? And because of that, what we find in this class 5 and 6, the growth is what? It is negative in terms of number of towns. ठीक है? You can understand, I have talked about before also, that primarily the Shyama Prasad Mukherjee rural-urban mission is trying to do what? It is essentially formulated for accelerating this process of conversion of rural areas to urban areas. Okay? There, what they would be doing, they would be taking cluster of villages. For each cluster of villages, there would be a central village where some manufacturing would be local, cottage, other manufacturing would be planned. And definitely, in this way, what will happen with that central village? Soon that would grow into a town. Okay? So, what we are saying, at two places the hierarchy is broken in India. And one is the distance between million plus cities and immediately lower towns. And second one is the urban and rural divide. Okay? So, this is the urban and rural divide. Urban and rural divide. So, उसमें एक लाइन और लिख लो. The two exceptions found are related to million plus cities, which stand apart or which appear to stand apart in the urban or in the settlement hierarchy as primate cities. While the second exception is found at the lowest order urban settlements and the below located rural settlements. Which is reflective of the high rural urban divide in India. High rural urban divide in India. ठीक है? सो ये हो गया दूसरा क्वेश्चन. दूसरा पॉइंट लिखते हैं, चेंज द पैराग्राफ. सो हमने अभी तक किसकी बात की है? मार्केटिंग प्रिंसिपल के कंटेक्स्ट में. सेकेंड इज द ट्रांसपोर्टेशन प्रिंसिपल. सो देखो, व्हेन ट्रांसपोर्टेशन प्रिंसिपल एप्लीकेशन इज टेस्टेड, when transportation principle application is tested, comma, it is found to be totally inapplicable. Totally inapplicable. Both with respect to the values of K as well as the theoretical distance. ठीक है? So in terms of transportation principle, no applicability. If we talk about administration principle, so देखो, in terms of administration principle, TOO2, the the model is found to be largely inapplicable with respect to the 6-level administrative hierarchy of India. 6-level administrative hierarchy in India, both in terms of values of k as well as theoretical distance. Values of k as well as theoretical distance. Full stop. However, there is one exception in the administrative hierarchy. Administrative hierarchy, which is found between or which is found at the level of district and tehsil. District and tehsil. Full stop. At this level, the ratio of tehsil per district is slightly over 6. Which is near to the value of k is equal to 7. Full stop. In terms of theoretical distance as well, the ratios are found to be near. The ratios are found to be near the desired value of 1:2.6. 1:2.6. ठीक है. So again, if you talk about, this is largely not applicable. Here it is applicable. So in terms of district and tehsil, below that there is tehsil. So here it is applicable both in terms of values of k and the theoretical distance. But if you go in upper hierarchies, again we'll be finding it is not so much applicable. For example, if you take into account the hierarchy of state, below that there is district. So here k की value कितनी होनी चाहिए? 7. That means one state should serve 7 districts. यही होना चाहिए. But this average in India was found to be around 21. One state was serving on an average 21 districts. Okay? So it is very, very large, the values of k. Similarly, one block, or नीचे जाएं इधर, if you look into block, below that there is gram panchayat. So it was found that one block was serving around 40 gram panchayat on an average. So here also you can see that the value of k is much higher than 7. So the only place where in administrative hierarchy of India this model is found to be applicable is district and tehsil. And interestingly here, both in terms of values of k as well as in terms of the value of theoretical distance, it is found to be applicable. Okay? So one thing we can conclude, thus in India what we find, as the assumptions do not exist in reality, the model is found to be only partially applicable. So we can conclude, thus in India the assumptions do not exist in reality. Do not exist in reality, comma, the model is found to be only partially applicable. ठीक है. सो अभी ये क्वेश्चन हमारा पूरा नहीं हुआ, अभी उसके बहुत सारे पार्ट्स हैं. एक पार्ट और करते हैं. इसके लिए मैं एक अलग से क्वेश्चन करवा रहा हूं. देखो, हाउ डू द emergence of world cities challenge the concept of, or challenge the theory लिखो, model या theory, model of central place propounded by Christoller. Propounded by Christoller. So if we talk about this, first here we will have to understand what are world cities. World cities, उसमें लिख लो, world cities are very large cities whose complementary area are very large cities whose complementary area extend beyond national boundaries. Beyond national boundaries. Full stop. Thus, world cities serve large parts of the world and even the entire world. Even the entire world. Okay, so such type of cities are referred to as the world cities. Now there are some important characteristics of world cities. Important characteristics of world cities. One important characteristic of world cities is their population is greater than 10 million. On an average, they are very large cities whose population is greater than 10 million. But presence of more than 10 million population, does it mean that a city is world city? Definitely not. Why? Because more important criteria is the complementary area should extend to rest of the world or in large parts of the world. Now, if we look into this kind of situation, it is actually found to be related with that these cities have also headquarters of important multinational companies, MNCs, multinational companies of the world, important MNCs of the world. So what is actually taking place? Because the MNCs headquarters are located here, from these headquarters they control the activities in the entire world. Okay, that is another important characteristics. Then these also have headquarters of important international organizations. Important international organizations like WTO, World Bank, IMF. Okay? So that is also very important characteristic of the world cities. Another important characteristic of the world cities is related with their functionality. So if you talk about the functionality of world cities, these are mainly based upon services, and they provide some very important services, like for example, financial, like the financial services. Okay? So this is one important aspect of the world cities. Another important aspect of the world cities is the world cities emergence seems to have, because the world cities emergence seems to have been related to or tied to emergence of the new economic policy. The new economic policy seems to be related to emergence of the new economic policy guided by liberalization, privatization and globalization, LPG. Full stop. In their emergence, evolution of information technology has also played an important role. Okay? So all these characteristics are there with respect to the world cities. You can see without IT, how you can sit in headquarters and control everything. Information technology has been one of the key. Another key has been the rise of MNCs. Okay? The LPG era is another key which has led to this emergence. So for example, हमने इसको world city hierarchy देखा था, लिखा भी था हमने alpha world cities, beta world cities, gamma world cities and world cities in the making. ठीक है? So you see, for example, India में there were 3 cities we wrote, Delhi, Mumbai and Bangalore. If I ask you, which of these has more probability of becoming a world city? It is very clearly Bangalore. Because it is not Delhi which is giving services, it is not Mumbai which is giving major services, it is Bangalore which is the main hub of IT, which is serving large parts of the world. Okay? So again, there is very high chance that it can become the world city. Although we'll find that the functionality of Mumbai and Delhi is also changing very fast. So they can also emerge as the world cities of the future. So this is what we mean by world cities. Now I'll give you 2 minutes to think about the question now. How it is challenging the model or the theory of central place put forward by Christoller. Okay, so we have seen some of the world cities of the world, like for example New York, London, Tokyo, Paris. If you remember, we called them as the alpha. world cities of the world. Now, very importantly, what we find that there are a number of things which are different. Very importantly, first, Christoller's theory was explaining the central place, or in other words, urban or settlement hierarchy. Settlement hierarchy of a particular country or region. Country or region. Thus, what was happening with the complementary area of the central places? It was not extending beyond the international boundaries. Okay? Thus, the complementary area of even highest order central place did not extend beyond the national boundaries. ठीक है? However, what we find, emergence of world cities. Emergence of the world cities has led to a situation where the settlement hierarchy is becoming international. Where the world cities complementary area extends to large parts of the world. Extends to large parts of the world. Okay? So this is one important violation. Second important violation, if you look into, is very clearly that the Christoller's model or Christoller's central place theory, it was based upon the perspective of what? Least cost approach. Okay, which was manifestation of the Fordism era. However, what we find with world cities, are guided by maximum revenue approach, which is manifestation of the post-Fordism era. ठीक है. So why MNCs are going elsewhere? Although they know that if they shift their manufacturing, for example, if you talk about Ford or any other automobile company you take, can I say it is pretty much clear that if they shift their manufacturing to other countries, what will happen with the cost? It would increase. They would have to set up new facilities. So the cost would be increasing. But they know that, okay, cost is increasing, but what is happening with revenue? It is also going up, multiple times going up. Thus, overall, what is happening? They are having profit. So it is guided by what? It is guided by maximum revenue approach. That is why what has happened with the complementary area, it has extended beyond the national boundaries. Okay? Now, as a result of this, what will happen? There are a number of things which are taking place. One is in Christoller CPT, what we find, it is coming from where? From the maximum revenue approach. So in Christoller CPT, which was based upon least cost approach, so in Christoller CPT, the overlapping of complementary area of two CPs located at same hierarchy was prohibited because, so what was the reason? Because it led to economic inefficiency. Because it meant economic inefficiency. Why it meant economic inefficiency? Because it would lead to increase in cost. Cost of delivery increases. Can I say, but in case of world cities, we find that their complementary area commonly overlaps. Their complementary area commonly overlaps. Like for example, can I say New York, the companies which are located in New York, companies which are located in Tokyo, automobile companies, are they competing in India? India is their market. So again, that means what is taking place? There is overlapping of the complementary areas, and here it is not inefficiency, because it is based upon which approach? Maximum revenue approach. Okay? So here it is not an inefficiency. So that is another thing related with this complementary area. Also in Christoller's CPT, center place theory, the shape of complementary area was fixed. And what was the shape? Hexagon. It was fixed hexagon. It emerged from two factors. Why hexagon? One, because very importantly we find that it was about minimization of cost, overlapping को avoid करना था. And second important thing, it was also complementary area was fixed. In fact, यहाँ पर एक और word लिख लो, and static. Fixed hexagon and static. So why it was static? Because demand was constant. Demand was constant. You tell me, can I say in real world we find that, or in terms of world cities, what we find, the shape of the complementary area is not fixed. The shape varies. Shape is not fixed and it varies. So what is leading to variations? The variations in demand. Varies with variations in demand. Like for example, take the case of, the classic case of Vodafone. Vodafone. So can I say today Vodafone is looking for an exit from India because of the problems that it has been facing, because it is not getting so much of revenue, because of the kind of monopoly which has been established with the help of government by Jio. Okay? So again, other companies are facing very, very big problems. So it is looking for what? Exit from India. So when we talk about with respect to Vodafone, what will happen with the complementary area, or what will happen with the range of goods and services of this Vodafone? It is UK based company, London. So what will happen? It would change. Okay? So with respect to the demand and supply which is taking place, demand particularly, the shape of the complementary area would also not be fixed. It would be what? It would be changeable. Okay? So in all these manners we can say that the emergence of world cities is challenging the concept of central place theory. ठीक है? अब अगर देखें तो ये क्वेश्चन मेरे ख्याल से 2017 या 18 में आया था, एप्लीकेशन ऑफ सेंट्रल प्लेस थ्योरी इन कंटेम्पररी टाइम्स. ये दोनों क्वेश्चन मैंने क्लास में करवाए थे. वन क्वेश्चन वाज टेस्ट द एप्लीकेशन ऑफ सेंट्रल प्लेस थ्योरी इन इंडिया. देन सेकंड वाज हाउ डज वर्ल्ड सिटीज एमर्जेंस चैलेंज द सेंट्रल प्लेस थ्योरी. और उस समय, अभी मैं इसको बाद में और भी इसमें एलैबोरेट करूंगा. सो आई विल टॉक अबाउट, व्हेन विल टॉक अबाउट लॉश्क, we will see how many of the principles enunciated by Losch are actually applicable in modern terms, in terms of the world cities emergence. ठीक है? But unfortunately, if there were 10 students of guidance, मैं बात कर रहा हूँ, बाहर तो दूर की बात है. If there were 10 students of guidance, 6 of them did not attempt. 4 of them who attempted, they also did not write the question well. ठीक है? That was the kind of response. अब इसमें गलती किसकी थी? Obviously टीचर की तो नहीं थी. It was students' mistake. They did not revise it properly. क्यों? अभी मैं अपना WhatsApp खोल के दिखाऊंगा तो पता चल जाएगा क्यों. ऑलवेज एक ही तरह का क्वेश्चन, कौन सी किताब पढ़ें, इसको कहां से पढ़ें, अरे सब कुछ दे रखा है, उसको पढ़ लो भाई. सब प्लानिंग मोड में रहते हैं, करने के लिए कोई भी तैयार नहीं है. ठीक है? सो दैट इज वन एस्पेक्ट ऑफ दिस थ्योरी. देन डिस्पाइट दिस वी कैन से, अभी वो क्वेश्चन, हमारा फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन खत्म नहीं हुआ है. जस्ट आई वॉज टेकिंग अ सेकेंड पार्ट ऑफ दैट क्वेश्चन थ्रू अनदर क्वेश्चन. सो उसी फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन को कंटिन्यू करते हैं. सो विल से दैट डिस्पाइट these limitations of the central place theory, many of the concepts propounded by the theory are very useful and applicable. Very useful and applicable. full stop. These are still used in regional planning in most parts of the world. Full stop. For example, the concept related with central goods and services and the range of goods and services helps us to understand the sphere of influence, helps us to understand the sphere of influence of the cities and predict the future patterns of flow, with respect to resources and population. Full stop. Such a prediction is an important ingredient of long-term urban planning, like formulation of master plans of the cities, Okay, so you can understand, if a city like Delhi is able to provide higher order services, it is providing very high order services. So can I say its complementary area is very big? Its sphere of influence is what? Very, very big. So if its sphere of influence is very big, you tell me, will it be attracting people from very large area? If it is attracting people from very large area, this would mean that more number of people would be coming to Delhi in future. That means Delhi's master plan should make or should aim at accommodating large number of people by making several changes. Like for example, by making changes in the morphology of the city, by making changes in how the satellite towns would be planned. Okay? Because we expect that more and more people will migrate to Delhi. Okay? So that is again what? It is a very useful concept. आगे लिखो, change the paragraph. Similarly, the concept of threshold population is a very useful concept in planning of services and goods, to be provided at a particular level of hierarchy. Or to be provided at a settlement located at particular level of hierarchy. Full stop. For example, at the level of village panchayat, lower order services are provided, like the primary health centers, primary to secondary schools, veterinary centers, sub post offices, etc. Full stop. This is because the threshold population of a village panchayat is smaller of a village panchayat is smaller. ठीक है? So again, what we are doing here, because the threshold population is smaller, we are only provisioning smaller or lower order services. As we move urban, as we move upper in the hierarchy, what will be happening? The services would change that are to be provided. ठीक है? अगर space होता तो we can talk about the RP Misra model. देखा था हमने that how in the hierarchy, when we were in the lower order central village, what was there? Different type of services, lower order services. However, when we were in the growth pole, the type of services very clearly changed. ठीक है? तो अगर space है तो you can make that chart and you can talk about the hierarchy and you can talk about the service which is planned. ठीक है? So it is what? It is a very, very useful concept which has been provided by Christoller in his central place theory. ठीक है? So this is basically the application of the central place theory of Christoller. आगे बढ़ते हैं. So next is the central place theory